What's up, YouTube? We're a couple of cunts. We're in the countryside. We're talking about horror. So, I could a tale unfold whose lightest word would harrow up thy soul, freeze thy young blood. Shakespeare wrote that, or stole it, you know, ripped someone off, however you want to view the man. Hamlet, probably the progenitor of horror as we know it these days. I suppose most people would consider the most horrific thing about Shakespeare being have to do him at school. But, you know, from him, a slew of great creators of horror. I mean, you've got everyone from, you know, Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft, up to the people making great horror movies today, like Oren Peli and James Wan. One of the key figures in horror, and one of my personal heroes, Stephen King, is pretty synonymous with the genre.
You probably associate mainly with The Shining, and Carrie.
Yeah. The Shining, it is one of those things that's become so embedded in the pantheon of pop culture. I swear that most people's fear of clowns probably started with Pennywise.
I think quite a few people's fear of clowns comes from the fact they are quite freaky. If you're a child and you have some guy coming up to you with completely distorted features, wearing stupid makeup and all that shit, yeah, it's probably going to freak you the shit out.
It's true. I mean, I think chlorophobia, the fear of clowns, is one of those fears that's utterly justified. I mean, some fears, like even arachnophobia, if you live in this country, you know, a spider isn't really going to harm you.
Say someone having a fear of heights, that's a logical fear because, you know,
You
if
could
you
plummet
fall
to
off
your death,
it,
yeah,
you
I
could
know.
fall to your death, or it can hurt, or, you know, other shit. When people have a fear of, you know, stuff, I used to know someone who has a fear of balloons, and, you know, it's stuff like that. It's just sort of like, you do kind of wonder. I used to know someone as well, I don't know if she had a full-blown phobia, but she used to hate the Hoover because her mum used to chase it with her when she was younger, and whenever one of her flatmates would Hoover or anything, she'd go in another room.
Well, they reckon that most phobias and fears come from your childhood. Horror is one of my favourite genres. I'm 2 films away from completing the 100 Things meme. Basically, what you do is you make the commitment for 100 days, once a day, to write a little editorial about a certain subject. It could be anything. It could be 100 recipes you know from your family. It could be 100 places that you've been to. Mine was 100 films that everyone should watch. And there were a fair few horror films. I'd say
Most of them are Asian.
Horror was the most represented genre. Actually, there were only 2 Asian horror films in the whole thing, which was The Eye and Due on the Grudge. Old Boy was also in there, but I wouldn't count that as horror. I had stuff, you know, as varied from, you know, Chicago to Tropic Thunder to...
I'm a lead farmer, motherfucker!
To Unforgiven. But scattered amongst that was The Shining, The Silence of the Lambs, Hellraiser, Psycho, Rosemary's Baby. It's just something about horror, and I've no idea where this actually comes from. It's just the one genre that I enjoy and, you know, I'm interested in more than anything.
It's probably kind of not so much addictive like a drug, but it's probably the sort of similar thing you get from, you know, say riding a roller coaster, being really into stuff like that. The same thing with horror, where, you know, you appreciate the suspense and the tension, and then that sudden just scare moment.
Yeah,
I guess you kind of, once you get into that sort of thing, it's probably a, you know, a difficult habit to break. You're always looking for stuff to keep you on the edge.
I've heard that it's a lot to do with the adrenaline and the fear and that. I mean, what scares you is entirely subjective.
This
a
is
film
true,
that
so you
truly
can argue
scares
the other
me.
way.
When we watched Due on the Grudge with a bunch of the guys, Computer Joe sat there laughing his tits off the majority of it, till the door behind him started opening, and then he pooed his pants.
I don't know if it was an urban myth or something, but I heard a story once. A couple were, this was like way back in the day, watching The Exorcist on VHS, and like a bird or a bat or something flew in my open window while they were watching it, just both completely, you know, shit themselves up over it, which is kind of to be expected.
I've got a funny story, similar. This happened to one of my mum's friends who she went to school with. It was when they were in their, I think their late teens, early 20s. He was watching, I believe it was The Evil Dead. I think he was house sitting for someone. He wasn't in his own home. He was alone in his house and he'd watched The Evil Dead. He fell asleep on the sofa. Meanwhile, outside, someone had had a motorbike accident. And as I say, the house was reasonably isolated, so that was the first place they saw. The door was unlocked, So basically, he's watched The Evil Dead, fallen asleep and woken up to some guy leaning over him with blood all streaked down his face. Understandably, he shit himself, but eventually called an ambulance and the guy was taken care of. But yeah, I mean, that's the sort of thing that happens when you watch horror. I mean, horror can be scary enough, but if something else happens, it's like, I swear there were 2 or possibly 3 points while I was at uni where we watched the American remake of The Ring, and afterwards, the fucking phone rang. The second or third time it happened, I picked the phone, screamed, "Fuck off!" and slammed it down. Well, that's it. I don't think it was, but the person who I was watching it with said, "What if that had been your parents?" I went, "Oh yeah, that wouldn't have looked too good, would
It's
it?"
like, look, Mum, I've got a perfectly good explanation. I was watching a horror film, you shit me up.
My mum would totally understand that, because like me, she's a horror nut. It's probably where I get it from. These days, one of the best horror things going. There's still a lot of good horror movies coming out. There's still a lot of good horror literature coming out. But one of the best things you can see is Marble Hornets, which is a YouTube series. It's available entirely free, and it's based around the Slender Man. Now, a lot of the locations they used were these old buildings, an old hospital, and that sort of thing. And yeah, we happened across this place.
For the purposes of illustrating this, we are literally, there is some buildings behind us, but somewhat abandoned at this point, but we are half an hour, 40 minutes from the nearest civilization right now, so we are literally cut off right now. This place is probably only inhabited by crackheads or people here on a rave. This is proper weird in the woods type shit. Basically down there is a basement which we can't get in. Tyres which are just out of shot here, we just have to climb up here, so there should be some stairs where we are now.
They're gone.
Otherwise you wouldn't actually be able to get in the building, because this is what, like 6-7 foot up off the floor where we are now. We can't go down, we can get upstairs. Most of the walls and stuff look like they're a bit structurally impaired. The floors are thankfully fine. But yeah, this is a really kick-ass dilapidated house, or whatever it was.
So yeah, I would say that it's pretty appropriate to have a look around this place. Shall we? Let's.
This is actually a bit creepier even than our ghost episode that we did.
Well, yeah. At least the place we were looking in the ghost episode was, inhabited.
I should point out we've played this place for crackheads. We don't actually know everything in here.
I didn't see this before, so... Is there a
I'm guessing
body
this is
walled
the
up
old
in there?
stairs
that
went down there. So
how far down does that go?
We can't get any further down. I'm not going to go jumping on that floor either, just in case we get... I do like the little graffiti.
Who would live in a house like this? In this alcove, we have Norman Bates, over here Jack Torrance.
We have was here, spelled Washier.
Well, at least it's spelled was, not W-O-Z, which is always a good thing.
Somewhat suspicious stain on the wall here. That paint.
I can see why you'd get confused.
Another fucked up room here.
I can see
Obviously a Sex Pistols fan, so just engraved out on the wall.
the window's still got most of its frame in here. So.
There's a door frame just outside here, I assume.
Also looks like some sort of perhaps basement access down here, or what may have been an annex of some description. I feel like this is less about horror and more about, real estate.
Yeah, but to be fair, you can only convey so much on YouTube. We just looked around this place for the first time 5 minutes ago. I think the...
As you can see, if you look out of this window, all there is for some miles is woodland. This is serious Blair Witch shit.
typical Mother Russia stuff.
Sorry, I like what we did there though. I think the somewhat pornographic graffiti slightly takes away from the horror element.
This is real horror here. I mean, this would never pass health and safety.
Although, I mean, for all the puerile juvenile graffiti, that freaked me out when I found it. Is that the name of a band, or is that some reference to people being spirited away?
It's probably a shitty punk band. We should look it up on Wiki.
Also, the ceiling here, not loving that. You see, one of the things that I'm most afraid of being claustrophobic is being buried alive. So if that ceiling collapses, fucked.
And get a bit closer over here. We're actually on a balcony right now. There's nothing actually below us, if you can hear. We're on a bridge.
I don't know if you can see, but over there there's like a
Loads of
shitload of
abandoned
abandoned vehicles. There's definitely military trucks. There's some ambulances over there. There's also what looks to be, I don't know, JCBs, diggers,
Dude with a
lorries, something like that.
Joking.
So I mean, yeah, is some sort of abandoned airbase is the closest thing we've got to civilization. No sightings of Slendy or anything, but still, I mean, it's really creepy. You know, sometimes...
And I think with there being light now, it helps it. But if we were down here and it was dark, if there's floodlighting in that place, I doubt that's going to come on. There's no street lighting here. Okay, yeah, it's a clear evening. We might get some starlight or something, but we're in the middle of nowhere here. We would literally be hands and knees trying to get back to the car.
I don't want to sound like a pussy on the internet, but there's no way I'd have the balls to come back here at night. Coming back here in the dark or on your own would just be a foolish idea, because regardless of all vampires, werewolves, ghosts, tripping and falling in there or getting shanked by a crackhead, you're fucked. We've been a couple of cunts in the countryside. If you enjoyed this video, like, favourite, subscribe and share. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter. If you didn't enjoy it, we'll try and arrange a Slenderman attack for the next one. Feel free to suggest a topic for us to talk about in a future episode, and we'll see you next time.
Do you know what is scary? The economy. It's not funny, but it's true.